I never thought I'd end up working the graveyard shift at a Walmart tucked away on the edge of town, especially not after dropping out of college with the usual cocktail of debt, burnout, and a vague sense of failure that never really goes away. But life's funny like that. 1 month you're studying for finals, and the next you're stocking shelves at 3 a.m., pretending that your life hasn't derailed so far. It's practically a different train on someone else's tracks. The job wasn't glamorous, obviously, but it was quiet, simple, mindless work for a mind that had started to unravel a little. That was the appeal, really. No customer service, no bright fluorescent rush of daytime chaos. Just the gentle hum of ceiling lights, the faint buzz of old security cameras, and the occasional beep of the inventory scanner as I restocked the cereal aisle. I started a week after the old guy, before me quit without explanation. Word around the break room was that he just stopped showing up, left his vest hanging in the locker, and never answered calls again. They said he'd worked the night shift for 9 years. Gone like he'd been erased. That should have been a red flag, but I wasn't exactly in a position to be picky. The manager, a guy named Harris with tired eyes and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow, hired me after a 5-minute interview where he mostly stared at my shoes and asked if I could lift 40 pounds. On my first night, I showed up early, thinking I'd get a quick tour, maybe some training. Instead, Harris led me through the eerily empty aisles to the break room, where he handed me a laminated sheet of paper. He didn't say much, just nodded toward the paper and said, "Read that, memorize it, follow it." Then he handed me a vest that smelled faintly of bleach and left. The paper had bold letters at the top: night shift protocol, mandatory rules for overnight staff. There were 5 rules. They weren't like corporate policies or OSHA guidelines. They were more like something out of a Reddit creepypasta or an urban legend passed down between employees too scared to quit. But there it was, printed in blocky Arial font like some bureaucratic warning sign. Rule number 1. Never look into the security mirror at the end of aisle 7 between 3 a.m. and 3:33 a.m. Rule number 2. If a customer appears between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m., do not speak to them. Notify the manager immediately. Rule number 3. If you hear crying from the dressing rooms, ignore it. Do not investigate. Rule number 4. At exactly 3:45 a.m., go to the electronics section and press play on demo TV number 3. Do not skip this step. Rule number 5. At exactly 4:44 a.m., clock out and leave, even if your shift isn't over, even if you haven't finished. Just leave. I read the list twice, then a third time, looking for a joke or some fine print that said, "Just kidding." There was none. I thought maybe it was hazing, a leftover prank from Halloween, or some weird tradition among night shifters. But when I looked up, Harris was watching me with that same dead-eyed expression and said, "Take it seriously. Everyone who doesn't ends up gone." Then he checked his watch, muttered something about 3 hours till the first rule, and disappeared into the back office, locking the door behind him. That first night was uneventful. I was hyper-aware, of course. Every creak in the floor tiles, every flicker of the overhead lights made my skin crawl a little. I kept checking the clock on my phone, counting down the minutes until 3 a.m., and when it came, I made sure to steer clear of aisle 7 altogether. I didn't even walk near it, just stayed in dry goods, pretending to sort Pop-Tarts while keeping my head down like I was avoiding eye contact with a ghost I wasn't even sure existed. Nothing happened. No demonic apparitions in the mirror, no hands reaching through the glass. Just silence. A silence so thick it felt like the store itself was holding its breath. When 3:34 came and went, I exhaled. Maybe it really was a prank. Maybe this job wouldn't be so bad. The second night, though, I got curious. I didn't mean to disobey the rule, not really. But curiosity is a subtle thing. It creeps in, disguises itself as rationality. What's the worst that could happen, you think? And at 3:12 a.m., against my better judgment, I found myself at the end of aisle 7, staring up at that convex security mirror. It was just a normal mirror at first, warped like all of them, reflecting the aisle and the dusty overhead lights. But then I saw something. Not in the aisle, in the mirror. It was me, but not me. My reflection was delayed by a fraction of a second, just enough to notice. When I raised my hand, it raised it's just a little too late. When I blinked, it didn't. And then, God help me, it smiled. I didn't. I froze, heart hammering in my chest, staring as the thing in the mirror, my reflection, tilted its head slowly, like it was examining me. Then its eyes started to bleed, 2 thin lines of black running down its cheeks. I backed away, stumbled into a shelf of canned corn, and ran. I didn't stop until I was in the break room, door locked, staring at my pale, sweaty reflection in the vending machine glass. That night, I didn't finish my shift. I sat there until 4:44, then practically sprinted out of the store, too scared to ask Harris about it. But I came back the next night. Why? Because I needed the paycheck. Because I told myself it was stress, hallucination, a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew I'd seen something. And worse, I knew it had seen me. From then on, I avoided aisle 7 like it was radioactive. I clung to the rules like they were sacred scripture. And they started to make a terrible kind of sense. Because things in that store, they don't follow the rules of the world outside. I started hearing crying near the dressing rooms around 3:21 night. Thin, pitiful sobbing that sounded like a child. I kept shelving socks and told myself it wasn't real. And the night after that, I saw a man walk in through the automatic doors at 2:47 a.m., wearing a blood-stained parka, barefoot, and smiling way too wide. I didn't say a word, just called Harris, who appeared out of nowhere, stared the man down without blinking, and led him into the back. I never saw him leave. I never asked. The other employees don't talk much, either. We're like ghosts ourselves, silent, shuffling through aisles with haunted eyes, each of us pretending we haven't noticed the flickering shadows, the occasional reversed product labels, the cold spots near the toy section. We all follow the rules. We don't question. We don't explore. We obey. Because something in that store is watching. And the rules? They're not suggestions. They're the only thing keeping us alive. I didn't sleep the day after I saw my reflection smile at me. And I'm not talking about some goofy, tired kind of sleep-deprived insomnia. I mean, I sat in my room all day, blinds shut, lights off, just staring at the blank wall across from my bed, while that image played again and again in my head, like a looped reel of film burning itself into my brain. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd been that scared. Not the kind of scared you feel when you almost fall downstairs, or when someone jumps out from behind a door. No, this was worse. This was the kind of fear that sits behind your ears and whispers that something is fundamentally broken in the world around you, that something has cracked just enough to let the wrong things through. I called out that night. I told Harris I was sick, which I guess wasn't technically a lie, and he didn't argue. Just said fine and hung up like he'd been expecting it, like he'd already seen this happen before. I spent the rest of the night pacing my apartment, checking every mirror, twice, 3 times, 4, until my eyes were red and dry and every creak in the hallway outside made me jump. When I finally showed up the next night, Harris didn't even look up from the clipboard in his hands. "You're late?" he said flatly, and I mumbled some excuse about traffic, even though we both knew the roads were dead after midnight. He handed me the same laminated rule sheet I'd been carrying around in my vest pocket like a charm, and for the first time, I noticed something. At the bottom of the page, in small print that I swear hadn't been there before, it said, If rule number 1 is broken, do not return to aisle 7 until the mirror resets. No explanation, no time frame, just that. I didn't know what reset meant, but I knew I wasn't getting anywhere near that mirror again, not after what I'd seen, not after what I'd felt. That second encounter, or the first real one, depending on how you look at it, was the night after I returned. It started off normal enough, or at least as normal as a night shift at a haunted Walmart can be. I was restocking the frozen food section, headphones in one ear, music low, so I could still hear if anything weird started happening. It was about 2:55 a.m. when I noticed it, the reflection in the glass door of the freezer aisle. It wasn't mine, not exactly. It was close enough that you'd miss it if you weren't looking carefully. But I'd been looking for days now, paranoid, hyper-alert, and what I saw froze my blood. My reflection was just a little off. The expression on my face didn't match what I was feeling. I wasn't smiling, but it was. I turned quickly, heart pounding, and saw nothing behind me. Just the same empty aisle and rows of bagged peas and pizzas and TV dinners. But when I looked back at the glass, the smile was wider now. That same slow, knowing grin from the aisle 7 mirror. That was when I realized something awful. It wasn't just a mirror anymore. Whatever I'd seen, whatever I'd let see me, it was following me. Or worse, it had entered me in some way, like a stain that had soaked through the fabric of who I was. I left that aisle and went straight to the back, pretending to need more shelf labels. Harris was in the stockroom, sitting at his desk with the security monitors glowing dimly in front of him. I hesitated, then asked him outright, "What happens if the mirror doesn't reset?" He didn't answer immediately, just kept staring at the screens like he was watching something I couldn't see. Then he muttered, almost too low to hear, "Then it becomes you." I didn't ask him to explain. I couldn't. My throat was too tight, and my skin felt like it didn't fit anymore. I spent the next few nights avoiding anything reflective, mirrors, windows, freezer doors, even the glass on the vending machines. I noticed a few other employees doing the same, subtly, like we were all survivors of the same silent war we couldn't talk about. The mirrors weren't just tools anymore. They were portals or prisons, or maybe even something worse. Maybe they were watching. One night, maybe a week later, I came in and found a new hire clocking in. A skinny kid named Dean, probably 19, with bright eyes and a stupid grin that hadn't yet been crushed by the weight of this place. I wanted to warn him, to tell him to quit while he still had a soul, but what could I say? Hey, don't look in the mirror after 3 a.m. or you'll see a smiling version of yourself that wants to eat your skin. I kept quiet, like they all did before me, and let him learn the way we all did. That night, around 3:10 a.m., I saw him walking toward aisle 7. I tried to stop him, I really did, but I was too late. I watched from behind the cereal end cap as he stood there, staring up into that warped mirror, like he didn't understand what he was seeing. Then he screamed, a sharp animal noise that cut through the silence like a blade, and ran. He didn't come back the next night, or the one after that. A week later, his name was gone from the schedule. Just a blank space where his shifts used to be. No explanation. When I asked Harris about it, he just said he didn't follow the rules. That was it. Like that was the beginning and end of the conversation. I started having dreams after that, horrible ones, the kind that stick to your ribs long after you wake up. In them, I'd be walking the aisles alone, the lights dim and flickering, and every mirror I passed would show a different version of me, some smiling, some crying, some bleeding from the eyes, but all of them whispering the same thing. You already broke the rule. It's just waiting. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like I'd been running for hours, and every time I'd check my reflection in the bathroom mirror, just to be sure it still moved when I did. One night, I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. The paranoia, the dread, the feeling that something was constantly watching me from just behind my own eyes. So I went back to aisle 7. I told myself I was going to confront it, whatever it was. The clock on my phone read 3:08 a.m. I walked slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last, until I stood beneath that cursed mirror. I looked up, and there I was. Just me. No smile, no delay. Nothing wrong. I almost laughed. I felt tears sting my eyes, relief flooding through me like cool water. It was gone. Whatever had happened, whatever breach it opened, it was over. I turned to leave. That's when I heard it, my own voice. Behind me, whispering. I froze, breath catching in my throat. It said one word, "Stay." I spun around, but no one was there. Just rows of shelves and flickering lights. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was gone. The mirror was empty. That was worse than anything. I backed away slowly, heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. The next few nights were a blur. I don't remember much, just flashes, cold sweats, the feeling of hands brushing against my back when no one was there, mirrors showing me standing still even when I moved. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I started seeing myself in places I wasn't, on security screens, in the chrome edge of the soda machine, in puddles on the floor, always smiling, always watching. One night, I caught Harris in the stockroom again and asked him, voice shaking, what the hell the mirror actually was. He looked at me for a long time, like he was weighing how much truth he could give without breaking me, and finally said, "It's not a mirror, it's a window. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, it opens." That was all he said. That was all I got. I don't know what it is or what it wants, but I know it's still with me. I can feel it in my bones, in my dreams, in the way my reflection lingers just a little too long after I walk away. And worst of all, I know I'm not alone. The others feel it too. I can see it in their eyes when we pass each other, when we catch glimpses of ourselves in the reflective freezer doors and flinch like we've been burned. Something lives in that mirror, something that wears our skin like a costume and waits for us to stop following the rules. And once you break the first one, there's no going back. The mirror doesn't reset. You do. The thing about working the night shift is that, after a while, your brain starts to play tricks on you, even when there's nothing supernatural going on. Your internal clock gets scrambled. You forget what day it is, and silence stops being peaceful and starts becoming this dense, oppressive force, like the air itself is pressing against your skin and waiting for you to crack. But after what happened with the mirror, I wasn't just dealing with sleep deprivation or boredom anymore. I was dealing with something darker, something that had crawled under my skin and refused to leave. The weeks that followed were a slow-motion free fall into paranoia. I started keeping a little journal in the break room, not because I thought it would help, but because I needed somewhere to put the thoughts I couldn't say out loud. Things like, "I think my reflection tried to mouth something different today," or "Last night I heard someone call my name from the ceiling vents." I stopped going out during the day, stopped texting friends, stopped answering my mom's weekly check-in calls. It wasn't just that I didn't have the energy, it was that I couldn't explain what was happening without sounding insane. Walmart was starting to feel less like a store and more like a living organism that had swallowed me whole. Every fluorescent bulb was an eye, every crack in the linoleum a vein, and I was just one of many white blood cells drifting through its bowels, pretending I still had control over my own life. That's why I didn't question it when rule number 2 finally came into play. I had been dreading it, sure, but also weirdly expecting it, like some part of me knew that eventually the thing we were really guarding against would show up. It happened at 2:16 a.m. on a Tuesday night. I was stocking shampoo in aisle 11 when I heard the doors chime, the soft, pleasant ding that usually meant a customer had entered. Except the doors are locked at night, always, and no one has the code except Harris and corporate. I froze, bottle of Pantene in hand, and strained my ears. Footsteps, slow and dragging, echoing from the front of the store. Whoever it was wasn't hurrying. They were taking their time, like they were browsing. And then I heard a soft voice, low and rhythmic, muttering something I couldn't quite make out. I peeked around the aisle end cap and felt my stomach drop. It was a woman, or at least it looked like a woman short, hunched, with wiry gray hair hanging in clumps around her shoulders. She was barefoot, her feet black with dirt, and her nightgown was soaked like she just crawled out of a lake. She was talking to herself, whispering some kind of chant, and her eyes were fixed on the floor like she was following invisible footprints. Rule number 2 slammed into my brain like a car crash. If a customer appears between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., do not speak to them. Notify the manager immediately. My fingers were already shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed Harris's extension. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. The store was silent except for her voice, getting closer, repeating the same 3 words over and over. He's still here. He's still here. He's still here. I backed away slowly, praying she wouldn't notice me. She turned into the freezer aisle and disappeared from view. I could hear the suction thump of freezer doors, opening and closing. Still no answer from Harris. I started toward the back room fast, quiet steps, but then I heard something that made me stop cold. She was singing, softly. A nursery rhyme I hadn't heard since I was a kid. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Her voice was shaking, almost playful. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. It echoed through the empty store like a recording from a broken toy, and I realized with creeping dread that she wasn't singing it to herself. She was singing it to someone. I turned a corner and nearly screamed. She was right there, at the end of the aisle, looking straight at me. Her eyes were completely black, not like horror movie contact lenses, but like 2 holes had been drilled into her skull and filled with ink. Her mouth twitched. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. I just stared as she slowly raised one hand and pointed not at me, but behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just the empty pet food shelves. When I looked back, she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just vanished. That's when Harris finally answered the phone. Where is she? I asked, my voice a hoarse whisper. Don't engage, he said. Where is she? Walk to the break room. Do not make eye contact again. Do not speak. If she follows you, do not stop walking. I did exactly as he said. I made it to the break room without incident, but I locked the door behind me anyway. Harris came in 10 minutes later, pale and sweating like he'd been running. He didn't ask what I saw. He didn't have to. She shows up sometimes, he said, always looking for her son. Always around this time of year. Her son? I asked, still catching my breath. An employee, years ago, locked in the walk-in freezer by accident. No one found him until the morning. I stared at him, horrified. He froze to death? Harris nodded slowly. We think she used to be his mother. Came looking for him one night and never left. Now she just wanders. But she's dead. So was her son. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was trying to decide whether I could handle what he was about to say. The thing that looks like her isn't her. Not anymore. He handed me a small metal whistle. Next time you see her, blow this and hide. If she talks to you, don't respond. She feeds off memory. Recognition makes her stronger. I tucked the whistle into my vest and tried not to think about how far removed this job had become from anything resembling retail. The nights after that got worse. The customers, if that's what you could call them, started appearing more frequently. Sometimes they were people who looked normal until you got too close and realized their smiles never moved, their eyes never blinked, and their bodies didn't cast shadows. Sometimes they were impossible shapes, tall, elongated figures with too many joints or faces that stretched like melting wax. One night, I saw a little boy crawling on the ceiling, giggling and mouthing words I couldn't hear. Another time, a man walked in and stood completely still for 4 hours, just staring at the greeting card section. At 4 a.m., he simply faded like static. The other night shifters didn't talk about them. We just nodded when we passed each other in the aisles, eyes hollow, minds fractured. We all followed rule number 2 like it was religion. No talking, no touching, no acknowledging. We were passengers on a ship crossing some haunted ocean, and the less attention we drew, the better our chances of surviving the night. But one night, I messed up. I don't know what happened. Maybe I was too tired, too rattled, or maybe I just forgot. It was around 2:30 a.m., and I was restocking the kitchenware aisle when I heard the sound of shopping cart wheels. I looked up and saw a man tall, wearing a suit that looked like it had been soaked in mud and dried stiff. He was pushing an empty cart and whistling a low, tuneless melody. I froze. He turned to me and smiled. "Excuse me," he said. "Can you help me find my daughter?" His voice was too calm, too human. I knew the rule. I knew it. But something about the way he said it hit something deep inside me, like an old scar being reopened. I'd lost my sister when I was 12, drowned in a lake near our house. And for a split second, I thought just maybe he was talking about her. I said, "What's her name?" The air went cold instantly, like a refrigerator door had been opened across the entire store. The man's smile didn't change, but his eyes began to leak something thick and black. "You broke the rule," he whispered. Then he screamed, not like a man, but like a modem connecting to dial-up, a high-pitched mechanical screech that shattered every thought in my head. The lights above me exploded. I ran. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out behind the deli counter. I fumbled for the whistle Harris had given me, blew it hard, and curled into a ball beneath the sink. I don't know how long I stayed there, long enough that my legs were numb when I tried to stand. When I came out, he was gone. But something had changed. Something followed me home that night. I started seeing people on the street who looked too familiar, like slightly off versions of coworkers or old classmates. Strangers would call me by name. I'd hear my sisters laugh in static on my radio. Once, I opened the fridge and every item had a note taped to it that just said wrong. I don't know if these things were real or if I'm just losing my mind, but I do know one thing since breaking rule number 2. The line between customer and coworker, between living and dead, has started to blur. I see things now that no one else reacts to. Sometimes I catch Harris staring at me like he's trying to figure out what I've become. The other night, he cornered me in the stockroom and said, "She asked about you again." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "The woman. Said you talked to her? Said you reminded her of someone?" I didn't reply. What could I say? That I still dream about her standing in the frozen aisle, holding her own frostbitten heart in her hands and offering it to me like a gift. I haven't talked to another customer since then. I've seen them, dozens of them, but I keep my eyes down and my mouth shut, and I don't breathe until they're gone. I'm learning, slowly, painfully, but the store, it's always one step ahead. Always hungry, always watching. And sometimes, when it gets quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, you start to wonder, what if we're not the employees at all? What if we're the merchandise? There's this thing that happens when you've worked too many night shifts in a place, like ours, somewhere so far removed from the natural rhythm of daylight and conversation and normalcy that time itself starts to stretch and warp like warm plastic. You forget what day it is. You lose your grip on whether it's been 6 hours or 20 minutes. And you start mistaking memories for dreams, dreams for hallucinations, and hallucinations for reality. It's like being stuck in a house with no mirrors, no clocks, and no one who speaks your language. And yet somehow you're expected to keep going, restocking soup cans and scanning barcodes while shadows move just outside your line of sight and the silence gets thicker by the hour. I'd learned by now not to question too much. I followed the rules like gospel, carried that stupid laminated sheet around in my vest pocket like it was a crucifix, and flinched every time I heard a door chime or the hum of the fluorescent lights shift pitch. I wasn't the only one by this point. The other night shifters had grown quieter, paler, more hollow in the eyes. No one spoke unless necessary. Even Harris started looking stretched thin. He'd always been a little worn down, like a man who'd seen too much too fast and now refused to blink just in case something changed when he wasn't looking. But lately, he had this twitch in his left eye, and he jumped at sudden sounds like a stray dog. We were all fraying. And then came the night when rule number 4 reared its head, the rule I'd always thought was the most harmless of the bunch. At exactly 3:45 A, go to the electronics section and press play on demo TV number 3. Do not skip this step. I used to joke to myself that it was some kind of stupid corporate thing, like a glitch in the system that played the same commercial every night, and maybe someone made up the rule as a way of forcing the store to loop it properly. I even skipped it once early on, back when I was still naive enough to assume these rules were more suggestion than survival. That night, all the TVS flickered static for exactly 13 minutes straight, and then rebooted in unison with a sound like distant screaming. I didn't question it after that. Not until the night I forgot. I didn't mean to. I'd been trying to avoid a group of customers who weren't really customers, 3 figures in aisle 15, all facing the same direction, wearing matching blue jackets and not saying a word. They stood there like mannequins, perfectly still, and I spent over an hour dodging them, rerouting my tasks, hiding in the back. By the time I checked the clock, it was already 3:48 and I sprinted toward electronics, heart pounding, hoping I could still fix it. The section was dark too dark. The overhead lights had dimmed to a murky yellow, and the usual demo music wasn't playing. All the TVs were off. I reached demo TV number 3, the one always tuned to corporate advertisements and soothing in-store promos, and pressed the play button on the small remote taped to the wall behind it. For a second, nothing happened. Then the screen blinked on, but it wasn't the usual footage. No smiling Walmart associates. No perky narrator voice. It was a hallway, dark, narrow, lit only by a single swinging bulb. The camera was low to the ground, like someone was crawling. Heavy breathing echoed through the speakers, ragged and desperate. I tried to turn it off. The remote didn't work. I pressed the power button. Nothing. I reached for the plug, but before I could yank it out, the screen changed. Now it showed the store, our store, empty and quiet, filmed from angles that didn't exist. The ceiling, the vents, behind shelves. And then, one by one, the TVS next to demo TV number 3 began turning on by themselves, each showing a different feed. I saw the loading dock, the break room, the women's restroom. I saw myself from behind, standing in front of the TV, the breath caught in my throat. I turned around, nothing there. I looked back. The screen still showed me from behind. Only now, I was smiling, slowly, deliberately. I backed away, my entire body shaking, but every screen followed me, shifting angles like invisible cameras had taken over the store. I heard whispers behind me, dozens of voices overlapping like radio signals crossed in a storm. Some said my name, others were laughing, one was crying. Then demo TV number 3 showed something that still makes me want to scream when I think about it. Harris, tied to a chair, eyes open but glazed over, mouth wide in a scream that made no sound. Something tall and gray-skinned loomed behind him, its head shaped like an old satellite dish, crackling with static. The thing leaned in close to the camera and hissed, "You forgot." Every light in the store went out, not flickered, snapped. I was plunged into darkness, so absolute I couldn't even see my hands in front of my face. But the TVs stayed on, bright as day. All 50 of them. They lit up the electronics section like a demented Christmas tree. Every screen now showed one of us night shift workers caught mid-task, frozen like statues, eyes wide in terror. I saw Marla in the toy aisle, mouth gaping. I saw Greg near the security cages, his face distorted like it was being pulled in 2 directions. I saw myself in the break room, sleeping. I hadn't been in the break room all night. I didn't even remember the last time I'd sat down. But there I was, slumped in the chair under the bulletin board, head lolled to one side. As I watched, the version of me on screen lifted its head, stared straight into the camera, and said, "You can't leave now." The power snapped back on. The lights returned. The TVs all turned off simultaneously, except demo TV number 3, which now showed the regular loop of cheerful promotions, like nothing had happened. I stood there for several minutes, trying not to throw up. When I finally stumbled to the break room, it was empty, but the chair under the bulletin board was still warm. I didn't finish my shift. I walked out at 4:30, ignoring rule number 5 completely, too shaken to even check the clock. Harris called me the next afternoon, not on the store line, but on my personal phone, something he'd never used before. His voice was low, rasping. "Did you press play last night?" I hesitated and said, "Yes, but I was late." He didn't respond right away, just breathed into the line like someone who'd just seen something truly awful. "The broadcast loop is a seal," he said finally. "It keeps them distracted, gives them something to watch, something to mimic." "Them?" I asked. "What are they?" "I don't know," he whispered. "But the cameras don't belong to us anymore. And once you're on the screen, they start remembering your shape." That night, I came in and found demo TV number 3 playing footage of the break room again. Except this time, it wasn't me in the chair. It was Dean, the new hire who'd vanished weeks ago. He was staring at the camera, unmoving, expression blank. I asked Harris about it, but he didn't answer. Just locked the electronics section with a padlock and hung a new sign that read, "Under maintenance, do not enter." But that didn't stop the screens. Over the next few nights, the demo TVs began turning on randomly, sometimes showing static, sometimes faces we hadn't seen in weeks, sometimes images that couldn't be real like the store, submerged underwater or upside down, or crawling with things that looked like us but weren't. One night, I saw a version of myself inside a casket-shaped aisle, blinking slowly as hundreds of versions of me whispered behind the camera. Another night, I saw my sister dead since childhood standing near the returns desk, smiling into the lens and mouthing something I couldn't hear. The worst, though, was the night I saw my future. I know how that sounds. Crazy, impossible. But I swear to God, I saw myself aged 20 years, gray around the edges, still stocking shelves, still wearing the same blue vest, eyes completely blank. I stood there watching myself, watching this broken, burned-out version of who I might become, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I almost broke. I almost cried, almost screamed, almost walked into the street and didn't stop walking. But I didn't, because when I looked back at the screen, future me turned and looked straight into the camera, lifted one hand, and pointed to the clock behind him. It read 4:44 the rule. The final one. The only one that still gave us an exit. I don't know what the broadcast really is, whether it's a window, a trap, a feeding mechanism for whatever's infesting that place, but I know this. It remembers. It records. And once it plays you back, you stop being real. You become part of the loop. A living tape. A ghost made of flickers and static. And if you forget to press play, even just once, it gets hungry. It looks for new footage, and the footage it finds is you. You'd think after everything, after the mirror, the customers, the broadcast, I'd be numb to it by now. Like horror eventually becomes just another part of the job, like ringing up cereal or sweeping spilled cat litter off the floor. But it doesn't. It builds, layers on top of layers, like dust that keeps settling no matter how often you clean. And the worst part is, you don't realize how far gone you are until one night you're staring at your own face in the security monitor and you don't recognize it anymore. The last rule was the only one I'd never broken, rule number 5. At exactly 4:44 clock out and leave. Even if your shift isn't over, even if you haven't finished, just leave. It was the cleanest rule, the clearest, and maybe the only one that sounded like common sense. Most nights, I'd be standing by the time clock at 4:40 sharp, punching out on the dot like a ritual, like a spell, because the air got different after 4:44, heavier, quieter, like the store was holding its breath. But the night that everything finally broke, the night I realized we weren't just surviving Walmart, we were being worn down by, it was the night I didn't make it to the clock in time. It started like any other shift. I was restocking shampoo. Again, the store was empty, quiet, humming with its usual mechanical heartbeat. Harris wasn't in yet, which was weird. He was always there by 12:45, walking the aisles like a man pacing the deck of a sinking ship. I checked the back room. His office. Nothing. The lights were on, but the chair was empty. The monitor showed static. I felt the first tug of dread in my chest then, like a ripple under calm water. Still, I followed the routine. I stuck to the rules. At 3:45, I pressed play on demo TV number 3, just a black screen this time, with a faint clicking sound behind it, like a metronome or a heartbeat slowed down. At 4:30, I started making my way to the break room, heart pounding with that familiar sense of rising pressure, like something behind me was waking up. But then I heard it, the ding of the front doors opening. I froze, not because of the sound itself, but because I felt it in my teeth, like someone had rung a tuning fork inside my skull. I turned and looked down the main aisle. Someone had come in. He was tall. That's all I could tell at first. No cart, no sound of footsteps. Just standing there, halfway between the checkouts and the seasonal section, head tilted back like he was sniffing the air. He turned and started walking, not toward the aisles, but toward me, slowly, deliberately, like he already knew where I was. My legs didn't move at first. My body wanted to run, but it was like gravity had doubled. I finally forced myself to move, cutting through end caps and displays, weaving behind shelves, keeping my eyes away from every reflective surface. I took a shortcut through the employees-only door and reached the time clock. It was 4:43. 1 minute left. 1 minute until I could leave. I slammed my badge onto the scanner. Nothing. The screen stayed black. I did it again. Still nothing. The hallway lights flickered. I heard footsteps, now slow, wet, like someone dragging a burlap sack through a puddle. The scanner beeped. Finally. But it wasn't the normal beep. This one was long, glitchy, like a tape winding backward. Then the screen turned white. Just plain white. No confirmation. No timestamp. Just a single word appeared. Stay. I backed away, heart hammering. The door to the hallway creaked open behind me. I didn't look. I couldn't. I ran through the emergency exit into the stockroom, dodging towers of toilet paper and crates of expired dog food. Something was coming. I could feel it in the way the air got colder with each step. I made it to the back loading dock, grabbed the metal door handle, and yanked. Locked. Panic bloomed in my chest. I turned, he was there. The tall man. Except he wasn't a man. Not really. His skin was pale, like freezer burn. His mouth was a thin slit that stretched too wide when he smiled, and his eyes, God, his eyes were deep and black, not like holes, but like they contained something. A sky full of dead stars. He raised one finger and touched his lips. She. Behind him, the hallway lights went out one by one. I ran the other way, through receiving, past the cardboard baler, back into the store. The lights inside were flickering now. Every monitor in the place was on, showing me, hundreds of me, all from different times, different angles. Some from months ago, some from tonight. In one of them, I was asleep. In another, I was bleeding. In another, I was standing behind myself. I didn't stop, I just ran. I don't even know where I was running to. There's no safe place in that store. After 4:44, that's when the rules stop working. That's when the store starts changing. Aisles rearranged themselves as I moved. The cereal section turned into the garden center. The freezer aisle led to the toy department. The whole layout was folding in on itself like a maze. That's when I heard the music from the PA system. Soft at first, then louder. It was a lullaby. The same lullaby the woman had sung in the dressing rooms weeks ago. Hush, little baby. The lights dimmed. Every TV screen now showed a countdown: 4:43, 4:44, 4:45. I had missed it. The air turned dense, hard to breathe. I fell to my knees between aisle 9 and 10, gasping, ears ringing. From the shadows at the far end of the store, things began crawling out, things that looked like people but weren't. Copies, glitches. One was me, smiling with a mouth that opened sideways. Another was Harris, blinking too fast. A third was Dean, with no skin on his arms and eyes like milk. They surrounded me in a slow, tightening circle. And then everything stopped. The lights snapped back to full. The TVs turned off. The air cleared. Silence. Deafening. Perfect silence. I was alone, standing, somehow, and in front of me was the time clock, screen glowing softly. 4:44 a.m. Still, like time had paused for me to choose. I reached forward and scanned my badge. This time it worked. The screen flashed green. Clocked out. 4:44 a.m. The door behind me opened with a hiss. Sunlight. Morning. I stepped outside into the parking lot, half expecting it to melt away or turn to ash. It didn't. Birds chirped. The air smelled like summer. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was awake. Harris was waiting at the edge of the lot, smoking. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like I'd come back from the dead. Not many make it, he said finally. Not after breaking that one. I didn't respond. I didn't have the words. That place, he continued, wants you to forget time. It wants you to stay past the edge. Because after 4:44, it stops being a store. Then what is it? I asked. He flicked his cigarette and said, a mouth. I quit 2 days later, packed my stuff, moved out of state, found a job at a bookstore. Nice place, quiet. Mirrors work like they should. Customers don't bleed static. But I still set an alarm every night. I still glance at the time at exactly 4:44 a.m. just to be sure. And sometimes when I walk past a TV display, I swear, just for a second, I see myself staring back. Not blinking, not smiling, just waiting.